of notice. As you know, Mike and Kim 7 weeks ago were accused of a horrific crime against a family member. They were accused of child abuse. During that accusation that day, they were handcuffed, they were arrested, they were placed in a patrol car, they were taken down to the Hillsborough County Jail and incarcerated overnight until the next day that they were able to be released. I can tell you that particular arrest has been devastating to this community, to the South Tampa community, actually to Hillsborough County as a whole. These two educators, lifelong educators, have contributed to this community greatly. To the children of this community that have gone through their respective schools, they have always been viewed as top-notch educators. In addition to that, obviously the community suffered a great shock. It was a big shock to both Kim and to Mike. They have been devastated by this accusation, this untruthful, this false accusation. And I can't tell you how many teachers, principals, parents of current students at Coleman and at Plant have called me to assure me that my client Mike and his wife Kim, who's represented by Andy Spicola, were totally innocent of these accusations. It was repeated calls, at least 4, 5, 6 a week, assuring me that they were innocent and begging me to search for the truth. And that's exactly what we did. I am happy to report today that the charges, all of the charges against Mike and Kim Hodgkinson, have been formally dropped by the Office of the State Attorney. I would like to read to you a press release that was just released by Andrew Warren, our state attorney, in this matter, and it reads as follows. Our mission is to keep the community safe and pursue justice while promoting a fair and equitable criminal justice system. We follow the rule of law and do not pursue charges unless we have a good faith belief based upon the evidence that the person committed the crime of which he or she is accused. In working with law enforcement during a thorough investigation of the Hodgkinson case, we determined that a key witness fabricated and manipulated evidence and that there was not credible evidence to pursue the charges at issue. Accordingly, we have declined to file charges and have closed the investigation. I want to tell you that in addition, and you've been given a packet of a document called a letter of release, which is the formal dropping of the charges in this case. That's in that packet for the media and for the press and for whoever wants a copy of it as well. But it's basically telling the world that these individuals are innocent and that they're not guilty of anything other than being great educators and great parents. I will, at this point in time, I really want to thank our state attorney, Andrew Warren. And I want to thank not only Andrew, but two prosecutors that I think opened their doors to Andy and I and allowed us to come in and to show them the evidence that we had uncovered that clearly showed that this was fabricated and a fraud. Andrew Warren, as well as Michelle, Assistant State Attorney Michelle Doherty and Carol Hooper, were individuals that opened their doors to Andy and I, reviewed the evidence, determined that what we were saying was true, that this evidence that they had or that the law enforcement was leaning on was totally fabricated, and it resulted in them confronting the accuser and the accuser confessing that in fact, yes, she had fabricated the actual text messages in an effort to bolster the false accusation. So I want to thank Andrew. Normally, as a defense attorney, I will tell you I don't necessarily go to the prosecution and show my hand. This was a calculated risk that we had to do. We knew that Mike and Kim were innocent, and so we took it. We are very disappointed, however, I will tell you, with the Tampa Police Department. Mike and Kim Hodgkinson should have never, ever been arrested in this case. Ever been arrested in this case. This was a poor investigation. It's an embarrassing investigation. And it's an investigation that, in my opinion, was based on a rush to judgment and nothing more. I'm going to take you through some of the steps that we took, that Andy and I took, in investigating this matter. I think it's important for you and the public and the general community to understand what we did in an effort to uncover the truth. Mike hired me, I think, a day or two after he was arrested, and I think that Kim hired Andy days later. Almost immediately, we went ahead and we sought the records from T-Mobile, which was the provider of the cell phone service that maybe was the crux to this particular case. Certainly it was the crux for law enforcement. We reviewed those particular records, and within a day and a half to 2 days, I was thoroughly convinced on the evidence that I had, which was merely the telephone records from T-Mobile, that a fraud had taken place. We didn't stop there. At that point in time, we hired Michael Anton, who is an individual in Jacksonville, forensic phone expert, one of the best in Florida, to come and help us and to image the accuser's phone and to try to extract as much information as we could from that phone. Much to our surprise, and when I'm telling you after 35 years of practice, much to my shock, the detective in this case had given the phone back to the accuser. Fortunately, the accuser was in the custody of a family member, and we were able to get that phone quickly. In the middle of the night, my investigator, and I'm saying it literally in the middle of the night, my investigator took that phone to Jacksonville, Florida, had that phone completely imaged, and extracted the relevant data, actually all the data that was on that phone. The next day, my forensic expert called me and said, "Rick, this is a no-brainer. Here's the fabricated evidence. Here's the fabricated text messages. This phone has been manipulated. And if you need me, let me know, and I'll be more than glad to share this with the state attorney's office." And that's exactly what Andy and I did. At that point in time, Andy and I contacted the state attorney's office. We spoke to Michelle. We spoke to Carol. And something somewhat unusual for us, we said, hey, not only do we want to come talk to you, we're going to give you all of our evidence. We're going to give you all of our evidence. We're going to let you speak to our experts. We're going to put it all on the table, and we want your forensic experts to go and take a look at it. And that's exactly what we did, Andy and I, about, I would say, maybe 4 weeks ago. Again, I want to praise the state attorney's office because they were there at that table, shocked, once we were able to show them what we had, and once they were able to, at that meeting, speak to my expert. I think they were shocked by the evidence that we had. But they took it, and Michelle ordered that detective to go and meet with their forensic people and to corroborate or refute what we had presented. About a week later, we got a call from the prosecutor who said, "Rick, you were right on. This evidence proves that there was a fabrication here." So, with that, obviously, we have a situation now where, Mike and Kim have been formally cleared of any wrongdoing. But let me tell you something that I did find that was troubling in our investigation. There is evidence from that forensic review that we had that there's a real possibility that other minors and or adults knew of this fabrication, either knowingly knew it or maybe negligently dismissed it. We are in the process of continuing our investigation in that. If we find credible, good evidence that either a minor or an adult was part of this fabrication scheme, we intend to ask Andrew Warren to prosecute those individuals to the full extent of the law. No parent, no one should have to go through what Mike and Kim went through. There was no need on the day of the allegation for law enforcement to quickly arrest these two individuals that were denying these accusations from beginning to end. They weren't going to flee to South America. They weren't going to go through the streets of South Tampa and hurt anybody. But instead, law enforcement in this case in my opinion, chose the wrong way. To arrest them now and then try to find evidence to prove their case later. That is not how our system of justice should operate. And I intend next week to ask for a meeting with the Chief of Police for the City of Tampa to discuss this particular issue. I also intend to discuss with him how shocked I was that one of his detectives gave valuable and crucial evidence, the cell phone of the accuser, back to the accuser without giving the defense an opportunity to do our own testing. By the grace of God, we were able to get that phone almost immediately upon it being turned over to the accuser. To finalize this, I also wanted to thank the Hillsborough County Superintendent of the school system, Jeff Akins, for being open-minded and for allowing us to finish our investigation. Andy and I for having that open-mindedness that sometimes we're too quick to rush to judgment, especially in government. And so we are hopeful that in the very, very near future that both Mike and Kim will have their respective positions at Coleman and at Plant High School. With that, I'd like to turn it over now to Andy Spicola, who was Kim's lawyer and did a very, very fine job in assisting me in getting this matter accomplished with this kind of result. And so I'm very grateful to Andy to be there, and to Gary Dolgen, who was also a member of our team, and frankly to my entire group of lawyers that are back there working and not here, but my support staff. They were working around the clock trying to get this thing done as quickly as possible so that we could have this sort of outcome. So I want to thank them as well. Andy, I turn it over to you.
You did a great job, Rick. You covered everything. The only other thing I wanted to add is demonstrated.
Could you switch them up?
Sure.
Thank you.
The only other thing I wanted to add is demonstrated by all of you being here today. As you can well imagine, what they've gone through has been horrendous.
Real quick.
Sure.
I'm so sorry about that.
That's all right. Keep your hands off.
I'm very hands-on. Very hands-on.
I've always wanted to meet you, too.
There you go.
Okay. As you can...
Thank you. I appreciate
Sure. As you can all well imagine, this has been a very difficult situation that they've had to endure, and I suspect the remnants of this will go on for some time. And from the very beginning, all of you folks, as well as many others who have called Rick and Gary and myself, have just poured out a tremendous amount of support for Mike and Kim, and it's probably not something that everyone realizes, but it has been very, very crucial to them being able to go through this time, to know that all of you care and feel their pain and are with them to go through this horrendous act. And the mere fact that all of you have shown up with this support and the cheers that you just rang out, and all of you folks back here in the back as well, and all the others that couldn't make it today, from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of Kim and Mike, we all want to thank you so much. And please don't stop. It's something that's going to take some time to heal, so they need you, and they thank you for all the support you've given. Gary?
My name is Gary Dolgen, and I'm proud not only to be Mike and Kim's attorney, but to be someone that has known Mike Hoskinson since we were in 9th grade. Mike and I were doubles partners on the Plant High tennis team, and we won the Western Conference Championship. I like to tell him I carried us, but what's after high school, you know, you separate after high school and you don't see your high school friends for a while. And then the next time that I got to see him is when my twins are enrolling in middle school at Coleman. And I'm thinking of Mike as, you know, this immature high school cut-up kid in class, and now he has the responsibility of being a principal. And the first thing he said to me is, "I have your back." I know he said that to all the other parents at the school also. I even remember on summer vacation him calling to speak to my kids to make sure they had the schedule that they needed for school. And now I have an 8th grader who's at Coleman as well. So I say that because I know I speak on behalf of Coleman parents who were devastated back in November. It was like a death in the family. And my 8th grader said to me, "Dad, am I going to see Mr. Hoskinson again?" Well, I had lunch with my 8th grader and my older daughter today. My son is up at FSU. All of them have had a special relationship with their principal, Mr. Hoskinson. And I was able to tell my son, yes, you are going to see him again. And so that is just to be able to, you know, as lawyers, the biggest joy is when you have that client who you know is 100% innocent and that you're able to get them exonerated. And I too want to thank Andrew Warren. He has been a great state attorney for Hillsborough County. I want to thank the superintendent as well, and the school board attorney, Jeff Gibson. I've had numerous phone calls with all of them, and I think it's important for everyone. You will see every once in a while someone may be charged, and it's the top story on the television station, and it was devastating. And we're just so happy here today. We hope this will be the top story tonight on the television.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We're going to allow very short questions, a few questions.
I do have, and I know it's a very sensitive question, but isn't the accuser their own child?
We cannot comment on the accuser because obviously it's a minor issue. There's a minor involved in this matter. And so I think it would be highly inappropriate for me to comment on that. The one thing that I can tell you is that Mike and Kim love all of their children, and they're going to make sure that all of their children become wonderful young men and women in this community. And I can tell you their heart is about this big when it comes to their kids. And that's not going to stop no matter what happens in this case.
Do Mike and Kim have anything to say?
We're not...
Switch the mic. Yeah, switch the mic.
I'm normally loud enough.
Okay.
Am I not?
So I guess we should ask you that question again. And we realize it is very sensitive, and we are sorry, but we do have to approach it. If you could just answer it again. We have heard that the accuser could be their own child.
I think it would be highly inappropriate for us as lawyers representing Mike and Kim to speak on that. When minors are involved, it's something that we shouldn't be talking about. And so, again, I can tell you that what's most important is no matter what the accusation may have been, these two parents love both of their children dearly, and they're going to do everything that they can to make sure that both of their children are wonderful, upstanding men and women in this community.
Rick, you said you're going to meet with the police chief. Do you have any idea why the rush to judgment here? I mean,
I don't, you're an experienced reporter. How many times do we have a rush to judgment? That happens far too often. And, why it happens, I don't know. But I can tell you that you know, the good detectives that I know, and there's many, many good detectives, both at the Sheriff's Office and at TPD, that don't rush to judgment, that they realize that these individuals are going to be in this community, and they're going to investigate the case, and they're going to dot all their I's, and they're going to cross all their T's before they make that drastic move of arresting someone. If anyone ever here has been arrested and can feel the devastation that one feels, especially when you're innocent, it is a life-changing event and one that they will never forget. And in my opinion, there's no apology. There's nothing that TPD can do at this point in time to change that. Hopefully, if I sit down with the Chief of Police, hopefully I can impress upon him that they need to do a better job of not having their officers rush to judgment.
How do they get their lives back?
Right.
The problem is that you've hit it on the nail there. It's going to be very difficult for them to get their lives back, but you know, we're not going to give up. We're going to hopefully, with the help of the superintendent, who's been wonderful, and we ought to be very thankful that we have him in that position. We are hopeful to get them both of their jobs back, and it's going to be a healing process, and it's going to be a long healing process. But we've got to be optimistic, and we've got to know that, hey, it's going to happen, and we're going to get there.
Rick, were they actually fired or were they suspended? What's their status?
I don't want to comment, you know, on the issues with the school board. Again, that would be inappropriate for me to do at this point in time because nothing has been finalized. I am confident, I really am confident, that we're going to see both Mike and Kim back at their respective jobs.
Okay, they resigned their jobs, and I heard that over the winter holiday they sent an email asking to rescind the resignation of their jobs. Is that
I know you're doing your job asking the questions about, you know, the superintendent and their jobs. I want to leave it at that point. That hasn't been resolved. I am hopeful that in the very near future it will be resolved, and when it does, I will be the first one to let everybody know.
I know you're going to be investigating this as well, right?
Oh, our investigation has only just begun. And the reason being is that, you know, we've got to send a message out to the community that if there are individuals out there that are fabricating allegations against their parents, whether it's a minor or whether it's an adult, that is a crime. And that's a crime that should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. And that's what I really mean that. And I think that, you know, we need to go forward and cross our T's and dot our I's in order to get that information so that we can provide it to Andrew Warren. I have been very impressed with Andrew Warren since he's taken the position. He is very open-minded. He is welcoming, you know, defense attorneys to come in with evidence to show him our side, which is a very good thing. So we're gonna finish this investigation. It's going to take us some time because we're in the process of interviewing a lot of minors right now and some adults. We're going to get to the bottom of it. I promise you.
Rick, you know, their voice. We certainly understand. I mean, Kim's been crying the whole time. You can see that they're holding hands in unity with each other. Why have you chosen to not allow them to speak at this point?
Because this is a very traumatic event for them, and I don't want to expose them to any more of that trauma. In due time, they'll have the ability to be able to speak about this. It's just, now's not the time. It's just too soon.
Would you like to say if this has renewed their faith in the system?
You know, I think in speaking with Mike, because I've spoken to Mike about this, you know, he has a great deal of faith in the criminal justice system. He certainly does not like what happened in this case because obviously he was arrested without a proper investigation taking place. And when I tell you, any 10th grader would have been able to take a look at these forensic records on the cell phone, and they would have been able to see there's a problem here. Because what happens with cell phones is that you have a network date and timestamp, and you have a device date and timestamp. And the minute that those don't jive, there's a manipulation of the phone. And so, you know, those are issues that are very, very simple. I can tell you that when Andy came in, we had already been in the process, and the minute that Andy looked at it with me, and Andy said, yeah, this is a no-brainer. Had the detectives, before arresting Mike and Kim, had the detectives said, you know, we're going to take a step back. We're going to let the forensic guys do what they're supposed to do. I want to see what these phone text messages really, you know, say and whether they're accurate and truthful. We wouldn't be here today. It's as simple as that. It just takes a little time. It takes a little work to do good investigative work. And listen, I don't want to disparage the Tampa Police Department, because I will tell you there are a lot of very fine police officers on that force. This investigation was nothing short of horrible.
It's hard to sue the police department, but is this case one where you could do it?
You know, we haven't even discussed that. We haven't even thought of that. That's not where we're going. For me, if we can prevent this from happening to another parent out there in Hillsborough County, that's the greatest reward that I think we can get. And that's our goal, is to make sure that the system is in place so that this doesn't happen to another innocent parent. And believe me, guys, it can happen. I've been doing this for 35 years, and nothing seems to amaze me anymore.
Rick, the big question is, what's the motivation behind the fabrication?
Again, that's part of our investigation. That's part of our investigation, and we're going to get to the bottom of it, and when we do, we'll share that with you.
Can you just share with us the people who are here today?
We've got principals, we've got teachers, we've got administrators, we've got people from the custodian group. We have everybody here from all walks of the educational system. And so that's the beauty of this, is that Mike just doesn't have great friends that are teachers or principals. He's got great friends that are teachers, principals, custodians, cooks, you name it. Everybody loves Mike, and I mean that. I don't think that I've ever represented a client where I fielded so many phone calls from people saying, Rick, you got to do something. To the point that I started to have my secretary field most of those calls because I couldn't get any work done. So he is well loved, and I have grown to know Mike and Kim, throughout this period, and I think the world of them, not only as parents and as human beings, but also as educators. Their passion is to teach our children, and that's a wonderful thing, to have both of these individuals in our system to guide our kids to a great life. Thank you, everybody. You have a good day.